You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we examine a set from 1999, Space 1999.
We're having problems with our rocket in the Randomiser.
And we prove that a double negative really is a positive with VFX Supervisor Paul Franklin.
That is all coming up in Pod 98
of the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Pod 100 minus 2, I was going to actually say there, not Pod 98.
What? Why Pod 100 minus 2?
Well, just to
We might as well say
illustrate how...
Pod 95 plus 3.
No, because 100 is significant and we're approaching that significant landmark, which I'm very excited about.
You say significant. That was the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had all these plans of going to Foxley Manor, the home of Father Unwin,
Yes.
and the Secret Service, and doing a joint podcast with the Benji and Nick show, and having a few beers, and what we're going to do now, eh?
Well, we'll talk about that later, because we have got a couple of ideas, haven't we?
We do indeed.
Before we get there, I think we should introduce ourselves.
I was going to say the exact same thing after you.
Well, I'm Richard James. And you?
Jamie Anderson.
Right.
And this is...
Yes, the Gerry Anderson Podcast. This is the place to come for all your Gerry Anderson stuff and nonsense over the next hour and a bit, hour and a half perhaps. We've got all the usual stuff that you've come to know and love. We've got Chris Dale's amazing randomiser coming up a little later, whereby he sits down in front of a random Gerry Anderson story and gives us his thoughts and comments. We've got Gerry Anderson News, because even now there's news happening in the Gerry Anderson universe.
There is actually stuff happening. Oh, in fact, you've just reminded me.
Oh, good.
Tim from the shop has told me to add something on, so I'm just going to type that in while you say some other things.
Yes, people have been getting in touch in their droves, of course, to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk with their thoughts and comments. They've been following us on Twitter and hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast. They've been following him, I'm Jamie Anderson, me, Richard and James, and tagging us so we can see their tweets. And they've been joining our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. What else? We've got an interview. Talk about that in a moment. FAB Facts coming up as well.
So many things.
I know. That's literally everything, I think, isn't it?
And somehow we're here every week.
Yeah.
I don't know how we keep doing it, but we do.
Tell us about this week's interview, Jamie.
This week's interview is with visual effects supervisor and consultant, and co-founder of Double Negative, now known as DNEG.
Oh, okay.
Paul Franklin.
Okay, does that mean we have to be known as the G-Pod?
I see what you did there. I mean, we can be, maybe.
I like it.
With GA Pod, some people say that anyway already. So
yeah, true.
Yes, so Paul has worked on loads and loads of very famous films like Interstellar and Inception, to name two of those Hollywood blockbusters beginning with I, but also The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, and other Batman-type features.
Dark Knight has a shave. Dark Knight does an hour's exercise. Socially distancing.
Has a nap.
Yeah.
All those films and many more.
I'd love to see The Dark Knight has a nap.
Well, that could absolutely be filmed on lockdown, I think.
It could,
100%.
Right. Yeah.
The Dark Knight has technical troubles with the Zoom call. Anyway, Paul is brilliant because he is one of those visual effects supervisors who loves the blend of the physical and the digital.
Yes.
So he's not one of those guys who's going to come along and say, why would you blow something up for real? We can do it on a computer. But he is one of those guys who says, why don't we do this bit for real and enhance it and expand it with the computer because we couldn't afford to do it for real otherwise, and getting the best of both worlds. So he's very much in the same mind as Steve Begg, one of the many names for the Gerry Anderson universe. Anyway, Paul's fascinating. There's all sorts of stuff. This is part 1 this week. And part 2, I think he'll cover a very special Gerry Anderson Thunderbirds connection that ties in with Double Negative.
Ooh.
So, yeah, more coming later on.
Great.
From Paul Franklin.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to that. Marvellous. Now, Jamie, but before we head on to everyone's favourite item, Fab Facts, you mentioned last time, and we didn't talk about this after the last podcast, did we? You said you had an idea for a game that you were going to talked to me about that have been suggested to you by a future podcast guest. Is that right?
Oh, yes. And I still haven't suggested it. I mean, do you want to talk about it now?
Yeah, come on, let's rate it and see what we think.
Okay, so it's difficult because I can't really give you a good example currently. But I'm just trying to think of one right now. So the future podcast guest is David Tremont.
Yeah.
And he will be on after our 100th pod at some point for a lovely 3-parter. But David suggested basically that we give a cryptic clue which refers to a specific Gerry Anderson episode each week.
Crikey.
And people have to work it out just from the clue.
Okay.
So I was going to say something like Space Sirens Song Spits Skeletons.
Okay.
But that's not cryptic enough because obviously, Richard, as you will well know, that is Dragon's Domain from Space 1999. So the monster which sends out the signal which makes people throw themselves. You know, see what I was doing there, and then spits out the corpses.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'd be happy to receive suggestions from our lovely Podsterons if you would like to send in a cryptic clue that refers to a specific Gerry Anderson episode. Send it into podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Make sure you also include the solution because Richard and I are not that bright and we won't be able to solve it. And if you don't send us the solution as well, we won't be able to read it out. But perhaps, we could do a cryptic thing each week.
Great.
And see if our lovely Podsterons can solve it.
Oh, I like that. And I like the idea that it's set by one of our listeners every week as well.
Yeah, because we don't have to do the work, Richard.
That's right, exactly. Let's come up with a snazzy name for it as well. But I like that. Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. Maybe after our 100th then. So 2-3 weeks' time, we'll revisit that and put it in motion. Lovely idea. Great.
Great.
Yeah, like
Copyright David Tremont 2020.
Indeed, yes. I approve.
Thanks, David. Right, shall we have a fab fact?
Oh, just the one.
Thought you couldn't wait. Here it is.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
As usual, I'm back with a book of Fab Facts, which I'm going to flip through and Richard's going to shout Fab, and then I'll stop flicking through the pages and I'll read you a Fab Fact. Are you ready, Richard, to shout Fab?
I should, Coco.
Here we go, then.
Fab!
Whoa, you left that quite late.
Did I saw it was quite a thick book.
It's very thick, yes. But despite your delayed Fab, we're still only in the mid-1970s.
Oh, right. I should have waited much longer.
There's a lot that happens in the 50s, 60s and 70s, you see, so it takes a while. Okay, so a few pods ago we talked about UFO actors who were in the running to be James Bond.
Oh, yes, we did.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Who was it who was repeatedly auditioned? I want to say Michael Billington, but maybe it wasn't Michael.
I think Michael Billington was one of them.
I seem to remember saying Michael Billington repeatedly.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is not about actors, but instead about sets.
Okay.
A very famous Gerry Anderson episode was actually filmed on the set from a James Bond film.
Get away.
Yeah.
Really?
So, again, this is weird, because you know how we say sometimes that the randomizer echoes something we talked about earlier on?
That's right.
Well, I've just mentioned Dragon's Domain, and quite randomly, this relates to Dragon's Domain.
Oh, yeah.
So, Commissioner Dixon's office is actually a redressed version of M's office from the Bond films.
Is it now?
Yeah. So Space 1999 and the Bond films, again, as you will know, Richard, were both shot at Pinewood Studios. Mm-hmm. When Space 1999 needed an office on Earth, they didn't really want to go to the expense of building a new set for just one scene.
Fair enough.
So they thought, well, we'll just nick M's office. Yeah, exactly. Why not? The Man with the Golden Gun had finished shooting at Pinewood in August 1974.
Oh, yeah.
And Dragon's Domain was shot late in the January in August 75.
Okay. Late in January, so maybe 28th, something like that?
Let's say between the 27th of January and the 9th of February, something like that, let's say. So M's set was just sat there doing nothing. So they redressed the set to make it a little bit more spacey.
Yeah.
But the giveaway is that the office door is the same plush red door that Sean Connery, George Lazenby and Roger Moore were all frequently seen entering through. So that's how you recognise it.
I see.
It's actually possible that Dragon's Domain is the final screen appearance of M's original office door, because when the set reappears in The Spy Who Loved Me, it's got a completely different one instead.
Has it?
Yeah. So,
I like that. Interestingly,
in Dragon's Domain, it's got a silver door handle rather than a gold door knob.
Right. You say
so maybe...
Sorry.
I'm just thinking maybe the set builders and set decorators on Space 1999 broke the door handle. And then when it went back to the Bond studio, they were like, oh, they've broken the door handle. Oh, we just need a whole new door.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe?
Well, I wonder if we can get to the bottom of that. I like it.
I don't know how the hell we're going to get to the bottom of that, but if we can,
does
then
anybody
great.
know? How interesting.
Yeah, so there you go. M's set in Space 1999, Dragon's Domain. Would you have believed it?
I would not have believed it. I was expecting you to say it would be one of those amazing Ken Adams 1960s futuristic, hangars and things that he designed. Ken Adam, I think it was, who designed the Bond, the big sets, rather than M's office.
Yeah.
Like it.
Not in this case.
No.
There you go.
Like it.
So, I think that brings us to the end of this week's
Set Fact. Ah, very good. Oh, there goes my doorbell. Now I'm going to leave that because I'm assuming it's a delivery of some sort and they'll just leave it anyway.
Are you sure?
Shall I go and check?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. So you go and check.
Right,
go on, go and do that. And while Richard is dealing with his weekly interruption, I just thought I'd say hello, Podsterons. I hope you're all safe and well, and keep coping with whatever restrictions there are wherever you are listening in the world. We've got a thing coming up at the end of this week, which I'm going to mention again in the news, which may possibly help keep you busy over the next coming few weeks. I can't say too much more about that right now. If you have got one of those cryptic clue ideas, make sure you send it in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. And now I'll just sit back and wait for Richard to return. Just enjoy some of my coffee.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Was it anything exciting?
Possibly, yeah. We're having Coronamus next week. Coronamus Christmas. We're doing Christmas. So we've ordered each other little presents. And we're going to have Christmas lunch and all that sort of stuff, put decorations up on the 27th. So yeah, it's
amazing.
Then, of course, I had to wash my hands because I just brought some things in from outside. So we'll pick it up from after Fab Facts again, shall we?
No, I filled in and you're actually now back in the room.
Oh, what, really? What, so everyone knows my plans for next week now?
Yeah, they do.
Coronamus and all that?
Yeah, they've heard all that now.
Join in at home, why not? Why
yeah, absolutely. Give you something to do.
Of your Coronamus celebrations on the 27th of April.
Okay, Richard. Well, now you're back in the room.
Yeah.
Would you like to share any messages of
Yes, we've had
goodwill
lots of
and
messages
kindness?
this week. So people have been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Now, I'm afraid I do have to start with some bad news. I really do think we should mark this because this week saw the loss of one of our own. We've actually lost a Podsteron this week. This will be Nick Cox, who died this week, one of the nicest and most encouraging members of our Facebook group, but also many other fan pages where I know he was also very active on The Prisoner and Blake 7, Doctor Who, stuff like that. So he was one of us and he was one of the best, and we send our thoughts and prayers to his friends and family. So
absolutely. Condolences. Very sad to hear.
Yeah, it really is.
Close to home.
I wanted to offer a little bit of hope after that. Do head on over to our Facebook group where I know the Gerry Anderson official Facebook page has posted a message about him and leave your condolences there. But I wanted to follow that up with a tweet from Craig Walker, who this week said, you may remember I shared photos of my daughter Ellie in an international rescue suit, coining the hashtag FAB Parenting all those months ago. Well, in October last year, we welcomed our second child, Harry, into the world, and Ellie has handed down her uniform to the next generation. And he posted 3 or 4 lovely pictures on Twitter there.
Yes.
Of Harry in his Thunderbirds uniform.
It's super sweet. You must go and look it up. I think if you actually just search the hashtag on Twitter, Fat Parenting, you'll find it.
Great, so that's lovely. Danny Moy. Now look, you've opened another can of worms last week, Jamie, when we were talking about
worm cans. What are you talking about?
All this okey doke nonsense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'd never heard of the thing. Danny Moy tweeted, really enjoyed the interview with David Holt, one of my favourites recently. I also remember Okey Doke, he says. I remember me and my friends used to sing Ring the Bell and Run Like Hell. I can't believe that's from Okey Doke, is it?
Ring the Bell is definitely, but I don't think the following line is. He may have made that up.
Yeah, Jeff Webb then posted a link to the theme saying it looks terrifying. CJ tweeted that he mostly remembered the smug grin on Okey Doke's face, to which Dave Lawson replied that he had noticed a striking resemblance to Richard James. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Blokey doke.
Yeah. Also on Twitter, Megan says, "Greetings, gents. Hope all is well with you. Not really Gerry Anderson related," she said, but thought you might like to know. I'm currently listening to the pod while writing up notes from my lightsaber training class. Yes, you read that right, she says. That sounds cool.
And we're all doing lightsaber training classes, aren't we?
Pretty much, yes, because we've run out of everything else. What should we do today? I know. Yeah, and finally, do head on over to our Facebook page, where they've been running a cosplay challenge. So the rules are that you can be as creative as you like, but you must only use items found around the home. Various people have been posting pictures of themselves dressed up. There's a particularly good Dick Spanner on there, I've noticed.
I did see that, yes, someone with a big tinfoil head.
Exactly, and a lovely Father Unwin as well. So do head on over to facebook.com/groups/Podsterons and have a look at those posts there.
Great. I think you're going to say Podsteroops there, which is...
Podsteroops.
Yeah, very exciting. We'd love to see you over there in the Podsteroop, Podsterons.
Exactly. That's right.
Perhaps while you're there, you could spend some time leaving us a revating.
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
I love your portmanteaus. They're fantastic. I thought you were going to make a dad joke there about lovely with a bit of gravy or something, but... Your portmanteaus. Anyway, clearly I've been trapped inside too long. Let's go over to the Gerry Anderson news.
Thank goodness.
Gerry Anderson news.
No, you've stolen my thunder.
Yeah, well, you were looking away,
That's so unfair.
You should pay more attention.
I'm sorry.
Now, I've just had a message from Tim.
Oh, yeah?
Tim from the Gerry Anderson store.
Is that his full name?
Yes, he's changed his surname.
Oh, I see, he changed it.
He's changed it by depoll.
I see.
No, dear Tim, who is head of the Gerry Anderson store's International Rescue Division.
Yes.
And he and Louise have been receiving a lot of emails from people who've bought stuff from the store, basically saying, "Where's my stuff?"
Ah, yeah.
Now, I just wanted to put a request out there, Podsterons. If you have bought anything from the store that's in stock, like DVDs and Blu-rays and books and comics and badges and pins and that sort of thing, please bear with us. We are sending stuff out pretty much the same day it's ordered if it's in stock. However, Royal Mail and most other postage services around the globe are really struggling. They've got lots of people off sick. They've got people self-isolating in case they have COVID.
And more people ordering online.
And loads more people ordering online. So demand is so high that whereas something would normally take 1 to 2 days to arrive, Royal Mail are now advising that you're looking at 10 to 14 working days beyond normal. So you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks for stuff to arrive that would normally take 1 to 2 days. So if you're in the UK, please sit tight for at least 14 days. If you are outside of the UK, again, we are getting advice from USPS in the US, that's a mouthful, and other delivery services, couriers around the globe, that you are looking at between a 14 and 30 day additional delivery time.
So please, spare a thought for those of us who are celebrating Coronimus at this time of year on April the 27th and are still waiting for that gift, that last final present to arrive.
It may well take some extra time, so please bear with us. And also things like, we give tracking details out, but if you go to Royal Mail and put in tracking information right now, sometimes it doesn't show up. That's because Royal Mail systems are overwhelmed. And so if you can't see it, neither can we. We've got the same access to the same system. I know it's frustrating, and you really want your stuff and you want to watch your DVDs or Blu-rays or read your comic or whatever. Totally with you, totally get the frustration. But there's nothing that we can do. Tim and Louise are doing their best, and I just want to make sure they're looked after and not too overwhelmed with requests, because it's frustrating for them having to say, "Look, I'm really sorry, but we can't do anything." So just trying to get the message out there. Bear with us. We're doing what we can, but we're restricted by mail delivery services and their delays. Anyway, there's some exciting new stuff that is coming to the Gerry Anderson store. We've managed to find something which has not been available for nearly a decade.
Really?
And we've managed to get some limited numbers of this thing, which has not been available for a...
No?
Sadly, we couldn't find any of those. No, it is a Thunderbirds-related set of items.
Of course it is.
Which you will be able to enjoy. Now, we are working on getting those from their secret location. And again, because of the shipping delays around the world, we don't know how long it's going to be. But as soon as those items have arrived, we will let you know first, Podsterons. I will post in the Gerry Anderson podcast group on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, and you can be one of the first to get these very special bits and pieces. Anyway, more in due course. more Space Precinct is also here, Richard, as you may have noticed.
Hooray.
We've
Is this
posted
the much-rumoured second series that I'm hoping to take part in?
It's the much-rumoured additional two-parter, Deathwatch.
Great.
Which has been posted over on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel. You can go and watch that.
Yep.
There's loads more free content over there. If you would like to read about Gerry Anderson toys and dive into some nostalgia there, Chris Dale is putting out some rather lovely articles about Gerry Anderson toys through the ages.
Oh, great.
And I believe by now part 2 of 4 will be up.
Lovely.
Parts 3 and 4 to follow. And this coming Friday, we will be launching a competition. I can't say any more at this point, but keep an eye on all of the usual Gerry Anderson channels across social media and the website and all that sort of stuff. And on Friday the 1st of May, I hope that's the right date, we will be launching a competition that's going to keep you busy through lockdown.
Oh, that's what we need.
Might be a way to give kids and parents or grandparents something to do together.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that you'll all enjoy.
Oh, well done. Look forward to
So
that.
stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
And the final thing to stay tuned for, well, Pod 100's coming up.
It is. It's just around the corner. You're right.
We've been podcasting for nearly 2 years, Richard James.
And
Can
we
you believe
haven't
it?
learned a thing.
No, nothing has changed. Just as unprofessional as ever. Still babbling on and relying on heavy editing. But our listeners' numbers have exploded in that time.
Yes, haven't they?
We've gone from, a couple of hundred downloads a week to hundreds of thousands of downloads a year, which is amazing.
Extraordinary.
And continues to grow. So thank you to all of you. Now, I think we'd like to celebrate not just the fact that we've reached, or we will be reaching 100 pods, but also I think we should be celebrating our lovely listeners. Do you agree?
Oh, quite right too, yes, of course.
So how could we do that, do you think? Got any ideas?
Well, listen, we often ask, and actually we've got one coming up a little later on, but for people to send in their audio files, don't we? So I thought it might be a wonderful idea if you could just record a little, 10-second, 15-second audio file on your phone or whatever equipment you might have at home to let us know, what does the podcast mean to you? Have you made new friends through the podcast? Have you learned some new stuff? Are you a regular listener? Do you hang on to your online connection every Monday morning waiting for the latest episode to drop? What were your favourite moments? What are your hopes for the next 100? Do let us know. Send in your audio files, please, because we would love to hear from our lovely listeners. Send them into podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk and in the subject line, maybe put Pod 100. How's that?
I mean, that's a bit out there, a bit left field, suggesting Pod 100.
So there you go. Send us your audio files. Send us your audio clips. What does the Gerry Anderson podcast mean to you? And we'll play them out. So this has got to be fairly sharpish in the next week or so. And we'll play them out.
Please make sure that you send us those files by no later than 6 p.m. UK time on the 6th of May.
Yeah.
6 p.m. on the 6th of May for us to be able to get those into Pod 100.
Yeah. Because as Jamie mentioned earlier, we've had to cancel our fantastic plans of coming from a secret location.
Well, no longer secret, but Foxy Manor. I mean, that was going to be great. We were going to film us all recreating the Father Roman at the window thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
never mind,
it's
there's
just
always
going
the
to be lovely.
150th. Hopefully we'll be through all this by then. Now, talking of the 100th, actually, Hannah has sent us a lovely email. What do you think of this, Jamie? Dear Jamie, I had an idea that you could do for podcast 100. Have you heard of the video communicator Zoom?
Zoom?
Yeah. Funny enough, I hadn't heard of it about 4 weeks ago. She says, it's easy to use and you can view many webcam users at once and you can share documents and images too. It might be a good idea to try out and maybe help during these difficult times for the 100th podcast. How about a Zoom get-together of all the podcast listeners? What do you think? Yours truly, Hannah. Is that possible?
Yes, of all the podcast listeners.
How would that work?
I mean, you know what that's like when you've got the gallery view of all the people involved.
Yeah.
I mean, if we went for all our podcast listeners, I think there'd be about 1 pixel each on the screen. I don't know how that would work.
And how would you sort out who's speaking next? It's difficult enough when it's just you and me on the podcast, isn't it, Jamie?
Absolutely, we'd always talk over
We have
each
to pass
other.
the conch, don't we?
Yeah, I don't know. It's certainly something I'd like to look into, and we've discussed doing watch-alongs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Particularly, potentially for Anderson Insiders too.
Yeah.
So, yes, Hannah, great suggestion. I have definitely been making the most of Zoom. I've been doing some remote audio drama recording this week, in fact, using Zoom and enjoying the virtual backgrounds that you can put in.
Yeah.
I had a different TARDIS every day.
Of course you did.
On mine, which is really lovely.
Great.
Anyway, thank you, Hannah. That is great. But if you've got any other suggestions for Pod 100, please let us know by no later in that case than the 31st 30th of April, I think.
The 30th?
30th of April,
Okay.
so we've got time to plan it and stuff.
Right.
Before
And one
time.
final
Anyway.
piece of news, Jamie.
Oh
yeah.
What news?
It's all go. Well, you might remember Milton Finesilver.
I do remember the very fine Milton Finesilver.
Yeah, who was subject to last week's Fab Fact, I think, wasn't he?
He was.
That's right. Well, I did a little bit of digging around, and I found on a website that Milton Finesilver was in fact part of TV21, the comic, throughout its golden period until its closure.
So he did get the job.
He did, yeah. He started there as an office boy, and then he became a sub-editor on the comics, and then on the annuals and specials. So good old Milton Finesilver made a career out of it. And I reckon if he's still around, he's the sort of person we'd love to talk to about his career at TV21. That would be really
wouldn't it be
interesting.
great?
I know he's spoken at length on various websites, and if you Google his name, you'll come across at least some of them, I would think. But what a good guest he would make on the podcast. So if anyone's got any connections out there with the marvellously monikered Milton Finesilver, let us know, and we'll try and get in touch.
Yeah, that would be great. And also happy to hear any suggestions for other podcast guests, although we've actually got quite a few pre-recorded now, which is rather marvellous.
Yeah.
Anyway, we keep dragging out this section of the Gerry Anderson news. I think it might be the longest Gerry Anderson news ever, so let's stop it now with this edition of the Gerry Anderson news.
That was the news. Very long news. Oh, did you hear my voice crack there? Oh.
You're still cracking, aren't you?
I know. I'm not well, Jamie. I am well, don't worry. But
you're very well, but is that because you're not talking as much as normal?
Oh, I'm doing a lot of talking, believe you me.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Makes
the kids
sense.
are home, so of course I am.
Now, telling dad jokes.
Exactly, yeah. Now, I would like just to read out a few emails because we have had some, rather a lot. Again, people are at home with very little to do. So what do? They get on the blower in email terms to us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. For example, Steve Bushell, hi Podsteron Wranglers, he says, please can you give a shout out to Abby and Willow for organising the Saturday night quizzes over on the Facebook group. They are doing a fantastic job. Yes, absolutely, do pop along.
Abby and Willow!
There's a shout out, excellent, and you can join in there. Also, I've only just realised, said Steve, that the shadow logo in UFO has an actual shadow.
Oh, Steve, really?
Yeah.
You've only just, I mean... do you know, Richard, I've also noticed the Gerry Anderson podcast has an actual Anderson in it.
But you learn something new every day, don't you?
Isn't that weird? I'd never noticed. Come on, Steve, do keep up.
Emma Nichols says, hey, Jamie and Richard, I was watching a live stream on the podcast group on Facebook yesterday, and Supercar got me thinking, which one would be faster in a race, Supercar or Thunderbird 1?
Oh, Thunderbird 1.
Well, obviously, that was quick, really.
I don't hesitate there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, what's the speed they quoted as going at? 7.5 thousand miles per hour.
Right, yeah.
A great way of reading it. I love that. But I don't think Supercar does 7,500 miles an hour, does it?
Well, I don't know.
Any Supercar canon experts there? Is there a mention where...
I mean, you're pushing an open door there, Jamie, aren't you? Look forward to next week.
Well, I don't know. I don't know Supercar well enough, but if there's a quote of speed there, I would love to know more.
Yeah. Andy got in touch. Hi, Jamie and Richard. I thought I'd take a minute and write to you again. I'm still amazed at how far-reaching the world of Gerry Anderson is and how the younger generation loves it as well. Yes, Andy, we love that. As proof of this, I want to tell you about the goings-on in my house.
Oh.
Right?
Really?
Recently, he said, I was going through the Gerry Anderson DVDs I have, and one of my foster sons, who's 5 years old, asked, what are those? So I told him the backstory and how fantastic they were. I then played an episode of Thunderbirds. Well, what a can of worms I've opened. He is now totally hooked.
Great!
Yeah, he spends most days making something or asking questions, and I've attached a photo of his latest build. He tells me it's his version of Thunderbird 1. I've not mentioned Captain Scarlet or Stingray yet. Oh lordy, what have I done? Anyway, keep up the good work. Cheers from Andy. Nice, isn't it? We love people passing down their passions and love for all things Gerry Anderson.
Absolutely. I mean, it just, shows the power and timelessness of those shows that 5-year-old, given everything they have access to across YouTube and multiple channels and streamers, they will still become fascinated by a show like Thunderbirds.
And
brilliant.
I reckon a lot more are going to be introduced to it this time, aren't they? Because there's no school, they're at home, they're going to be looking up at the shelves and seeing dad or mum's video DVD collection and say, what's that? Who's Gerry Anderson? What's this? What's that? We might well be breeding a whole new generation of Gerry Anderson fans throughout all this. That would be one.
Wouldn't that
good
be
thing,
lovely?
Wouldn't it? Yeah. And time for one more before we move on?
Please, I'd love one more.
Dean Harrison says, gentlemen, It's nice being finally caught up on the podcasts. I particularly enjoyed the interview about the Thunderbirds FAB stage show. Yes, with Gavin Robertson. I got to see the show in Sheffield, he says, and really wished my youngest son had got to see it. He's just graduated from East 15 Drama School and is currently extending his sellout Fringe musical from an hour show into something a bit longer for a UK tour, and who knows beyond that. Well, that sounds amazing, Dean. Do send him best wishes for that. It's amazing how, says Dean, how well people can collaborate over the web these days. He would have really loved Thunderbirds FAB stage show. He was fascinated by the description and has been approached to create a new live show involving puppets. Even though the stage show has no puppets as such, there are certainly things he could learn from it. One thing I remember from the interviews, though, is that the stage show was filmed but never got released, which got me thinking, could it perhaps join the many theatre shows getting a streamed showing to garner funds for closed theatres? I'm sure many of us would appreciate the distraction during lockdown. Here's hoping, fingers but not strings crossed. Cheers from Dean. And he does go on to say, the show that his son's taking is Tokyo Rose from Burnt Lemon Theatre, if you fancy looking out for it. So keep your eyes peeled over the next coming months for Tokyo Rose, and that'll be Dean's son. Yeah, well, I remember Gavin saying in that interview that it was indeed videoed, but it'll never be shown. I think it was one camera, I think, at the back of the theatre. You know, it wasn't no close-ups. It wasn't sort of good enough for broadcast. I think it was simply so they had a visual record, should we say, of the show, nice. So they could come back to it at a future date. So I don't think we'll be seeing it, sadly.
And I don't know where that is either.
Yeah, and the rights and so on. I mean,
no, exactly. I mean, we had a great tape come up in the archive recently. On a similar note, some recordings of Dad's lecture tour.
Oh yeah,
from the 1990s.
Yeah.
And obviously, I thought, oh wow, fantastic! Well, this will be great.
Yes.
But the audio is so bad.
Yeah.
You can't hear what's being said.
Yeah.
So you've got this, this lovely behind-the-scenes stuff of, Fab 1 being carried into the theatre and them setting up the puppets, and then fixed camera, Dad comes on, you hear the applause, and then...
Yeah. And it just doesn't do the material justice, does it?
For 90 minutes of that.
Yes.
I mean, if you listen and re-listen, you can just about hear it, but it's such a shame. But that, it's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, but that's not good enough. People aren't going to sit through it, and I think the same thing would be, true of the Thunderbird stage show, unfortunately. That's not to say we couldn't put it on again and film it.
Well, Living Room Thunderbirds FAB.
Right, I'm on it.
Do you think one-man show? Could you do that?
Easy.
That would be amazing.
Do you have a copy of the script anyway, Jamie? I'm not sure I still do.
I'm going to go looking for it and see what I can find. Okay. This is very exciting. You heard it here first, Podsteron.
Exactly, that's right, yeah. So that'll do for now. I've got many more coming up a bit later on, but in the meantime, do get in touch with us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Also, of course, don't forget to head on over to your podcast provider of choice and follow us or give us a like so that you get notifications every time a new episode appears. Leave us a nice rating. A few friendly words would be very welcome, and share us with your friends so they can get to hear us too.
Please do all of those things and more.
Yeah.
We'd love that.
Yeah.
Would you like an interview?
Yeah, okay.
Well, or part one of an interview at the very least.
Yeah.
Paul Franklin from DNEG, also known as Double Negative. Mm-hmm. Paul has been a visual effects supervisor for many years, has also done various other visual effects related things, and his credits include films such as Die Another Day, Johnny English, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Resident Evil Apocalypse, Batman Begins, The Da Vinci Code, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, The Dark Knight, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, Captain America Civil War, Blade Runner 2049, and Venom, to name but a few. I don't know if you've heard of any of those films.
You say but a few, to name quite a lot, you mean?
I know, I was doing that for effect, you see. Anyway, Paul is a good friend of Samira Ahmed's, which is how I came to really be aware that he was a bit of a Space 1999 fan.
Yeah.
We tweeted and had a couple of chats, and finally we managed to arrange this interview in which we delve into not just the worlds of Gerry Anderson and Paul's connection to it, but also a bit about film and TV, special and visual effects, which is really interesting, I thought. Paul's a great speaker. He speaks around the world and gives lectures and all sorts of stuff. And he had a really, really fascinating insight into what makes Anderson stuff so special. And also in part 2, he will be revealing his secret Anderson connection. But for now, shall we hand over to part 1 of Paul Franklin?
Let's do that.
Hello, I'm Paul Franklin, and I am a visual effects supervisor. I'm also the creative director of DNEG, which is a visual effects studio based in London. And I've worked on a range of Hollywood films, British TV shows, commercials, idents, and even back in the early days, video games. So I'm a fully rounded digital artist.
Amazing. A master of all trades, for sure.
That's right.
Just first of all, can you give me a definition of visual effects? What does that mean? Because I think our listeners will often confuse or not be sure about what is special effects, what is visual effects. Go for that.
No, this is something whenever I do a talk about what I do, I often start off with my visual effects, special effects disambiguation. So special effects is the physical stuff that happens on set in real time in front of the cameras. So if you've seen the Dark Knight movies that I worked on with Chris Nolan, the Batmobile, for example, that's a special effect. It was built by the special effects department, by the amazing Chris Corbold and his team, who ran the special effects department. And it's a real vehicle. It's engineered. It can do amazing stunts. It looks fantastic. Those guys also do all the explosions, things breaking up, crashing, special rigs if you want something to collapse or something to stand on end or something like that. They build all the machines for that. And special effects is generally, I always like to say, it's sort of big, hairy, beer-drinking men playing with a lot of explosives, and that's special effects. Visual effects is it's a different part of the filmmaking cycle. It happens in post-production after we've shot the movie. So special effects is mainly in the production part of the film where we're shooting. Visual effects comes on board later on. And what we do is we take all of the material that was filmed and we add things to it. We can add elements in the background like buildings or spaceships or landscapes. We might be digitally removing things from the frames. We also create things from whole cloth in the computer. So we do completely computer-generated things. We also use special effects and physical effects. It's all part of the process. It's not one or the other. So there's actually a lot of overlap between it. But visual effects tends to be lots of people like myself sitting in the dark in front of computers, getting quite pasty, and that's visual effects. And they are two different things in the filmmaking cycle. They have two different budgets. They're very, very separate inside filmmaking and television. But I think most people outside of filmmaking tend to call it all special effects, and that's okay with me. I don't mind.
Okay, that is an amazingly helpful definition. Is it fair to say that you are one of the proponents of taking advantage of both special effects and visual effects rather than relying more on one end or the other? Because I know a lot of people will just be like, let's do it all, the whole thing, visual effects, all this practical stuff, screw it. What's your view?
I think there's definitely a balance, and there are so many things that the real world just does better than we can do in computers. If you're blowing things up, for example, explosions, pyrotechnics, you always get an unexpected result, something that you never thought you would actually achieve. For instance, on the movie Inception, at the end of the film, there's a giant sort of very Gerry Anderson-like base up in the mountains that blows up in a series of spectacular pyrotechnics. And it's a real Derek Meddings Thunderbirds moment at the end of the film. And we built that as a physical miniature. It was about 45 feet across. We built it in a parking lot in Santa Monica in California. And we blew it up with pyrotechnics. Some of the guys who worked on the pyrotechnics on that sequence, they'd started their work back in the 60s on the original Star Trek show. So these are veterans of that kind of stuff. And what it did is it gave us a complexity and I hate this term, but there's no better way to describe it, an organic reality, something that you couldn't just place every little piece individually. It just happened as part of a big system which you set going, and then it does this thing. And we enhanced it digitally. We added extra bits to it, and we painted in the landscape and the background and things like that. But it looked absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to turn my phone off here because I just hear it beeping. But
no worries.
And that combination of the physical and the digital, I think, is a great way to go. Now, the reason why a lot of people tend to lean towards the digital way of doing things these days, so you think about for instance, all the big superhero movies with all the Marvel movies, for example, and they're very, very heavily digital in terms of the effects work in the films. What digital allows you to do is it allows you to push off making decisions on the set. Because everyone's under pressure. You're trying to shoot the day, as we say. You've got your call time is 7 a.m., your wrap time is 7 p.m., and you've got a whole lot of stuff to do. And the last thing you want to be doing is complex fiddly effects work. And if you can push that off 6 months into the post-production block and do it with the computer, that appeals to a lot of filmmakers. And that's certainly become a part of the modern way of filmmaking. But I think it's always worth pushing yourself that little bit harder and say, well, is there a physical solution here? Can we do this bit for real? There are plenty of things that only digital can do. A photorealistic talking animal, for example. That's quite a difficult thing to pull off with physical effects, and digital does that extremely well. We've seen lots of examples of that sort of thing. Digital basically just it increases the scope of the filmmaker. You can reach that much further than you used to be able to, because now you can create extraordinary landscapes and bring scope and scale to things in the computer. But if you've got a physical reality that you started from, and that's very much the philosophy of a filmmaker like Chris Nolan, which is get as much for real and build on that. And you'll get something that is much more convincing, much more immediate, and has a much deeper connection with the audience, I think.
So is that your framework for making decisions as well? Because I guess you're the one that people are relying on to say, this is what we want to do. How can we do it? So is your framework for making those decisions, if we can do it for real, we do it for real? Budget allowing? Yeah,
absolutely. The role of the visual effects supervisor at during pre-production, before we've actually started filming things, is you're trying to figure out what's the best way of making this film, and you're working with the other filmmakers, with the director, the producers, the other heads of department, heads of photography, cinema, camera department, art department, construction, locations, special effects, and very much with stunts as well. Special effects and stunts tend to be the departments you have the most kind of closest relationship with during pre-production, because you're trying to figure out what's the balance in digital versus physical reality that's actually happening. But it does ultimately depend on the intent of the filmmaker. And we have this term, we say we're going to protect this part of the process. And so, for example, on Interstellar, Chris Nolan was very keen on the idea of using an updated version of rear projection, where you put images on screens, actually on the set. You use projectors to put the images up on the screens. And so instead of doing a blue screen, you're actually showing the material on the set. And we did that all the way through the film, using digital projectors and huge projection screens that we constructed for the film. But that requires a commitment from the filmmaker, first off, to make decisions about what the content of those images is going to be, that they may not have otherwise thought about until they're in post-production. And it also requires them to protect part of the budget to allow for that sort of thing, because that wasn't a cheap thing to do, though it actually worked out to be very cost-effective in the long run. And it also requires the filmmaker to tell everybody else on the production, you have to give the visual effects guys space to set up this big crazy projector and maneuver it into place, and you're going to have to put up with their 100-foot forklift truck that's holding the projector and the noise of the fans from the projectors and all those sorts of things. And I think a lot of filmmakers are very keen to do this sort of thing when they then embrace, when they are confronted with the physical reality of what it actually means to their production. They suddenly go, well, maybe we could do that in post, after all. So it requires a filmmaker with commitment, and that's certainly what Chris Nolan is, a filmmaker with ultimate commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can see that across all of his stuff, really. I realise I'm sort of leaning on the production side of this, when, of course, this is the Gerry Anderson podcast, so we should get to some Gerry Anderson stuff, Paul. So
absolutely.
The reason we're speaking, well, is obviously because of your position in the industry, and we realised that we'd been on a Radio 5 Live discussion at some point, fighting for physical versus digital or whatever.
Yes.
Although I can see clearly you're on both sides there. But also because Samira Ahmed, who's a previous interviewee and massive Space 1999 fan, said, "Oh, Paul is amazing. You want to speak to Paul? He's brilliant. He's fantastic." And so through her being quite persistent, we got in touch and we finally arranged this. So clearly you're a Space 1999 fan. Podcast listeners, I'm telling you now that behind Paul, I can see an SPV Dinky toy in its original box, no less.
It is, yes. It's not the original one I had, but it's exactly the same version of it, complete with the original packaging, which I think the one I got, my mum bought it for me in the 70s. It cost 75p. I think this costs rather more when my wife bought this for me as a present a few years ago.
Yeah, and even more now. So you are clearly an Anderson fan, and I hope when we get through this and discuss later on, it's had some influence in the way you approach work creatively, and in fact, maybe even the path you took. But let's go back in time, as far as you can remember, to your earliest Gerry Anderson experience. It doesn't have to be the very first day, but something that sticks out in your mind. What is your earliest Anderson experience?
My earliest Anderson experience is watching Supercar on the TV in, it would be probably about 1969 or 1970 on our little black and white TV in our home in England. And I remember I just loved all the characters. It's Supercar. It's the wonder of the age, I think, was the. And they also all the Anderson TV shows, Gerry Anderson TV shows, had fantastic music, and so you also identified the music within. So I remember the Supercar theme was something that really stuck in my head. And then I moved on to Joe 90, and I used to sing my own version of the Joe 90 theme tune, which I made up my own words to it. My mum still remembers them when I was about 4 years old.
Do you remember them, Paul? Now you've said this, you can't not say.
It involved Joe 90 walking on the footpath. I sing Joe 90 walking on the footpath. That's all I can remember.
Because of course, Barry Gray made up his own lyrics for it too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Something like Joe 90, what a boy, there was no one could be cuter, an electronic king who could do anything with a brain that could rival a computer.
Oh, fantastic.
Something like that, because it was that era of, writing music that fitted the title words. Anyway, sorry. So Supercar to Joe 90 is a bizarre route, because most people I speak to, they're, when they start watching TV, they're watching the thing that's contemporary to them at the time.
Yes.
Now, for you, that would have been really the Secret Service and UFO. So I can see, as being 3 or 4 years old, probably watching, certainly UFO would have not been on there. But Supercar being repeated quite late, that didn't seem old or naff to you at all as a little one?
No, not at all.
Then?
Not at all. I mean, it was interesting that the Anderson shows, Gerry Anderson shows, they were ubiquitous. I mean, I remember the Secret Service that used to be shown on a Sunday evening. I remember with Stanley Unwin in it, and my dad was happy to watch it because Stanley Unwin was in it, and that was great. And then of course Captain Scarlet was. I was a huge Captain Scarlet fan, and when I was little, we moved to live in America for about 18 months. My father was doing some research at the university in Wisconsin, in Madison. And I remember being rather sad. I was only 4 years old, but there was no Thunderbirds or Captain Scarlet or anything on the TV. But then suddenly the local TV channel started showing Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds every day. And my parents had just bought the portable telly, and so we would watch it all the time. So it was... So they always seemed to be on afternoons after school or Saturday mornings in particular, and they were running heavy rotation, particularly up in the northwest where we lived in Cheshire on Granada TV. There'd always be a Gerry Anderson show on, and then of course when Space 1999 came out in the 70s, and I knew about it for at least a year before it was broadcast because a little segment of Space 1999 had been featured on a Horizon, the BBC 2 science documentary series. They had a little segment about, I think it was a whole episode about special effects and movies and things. And they showed the work being done on the opening pilot episode of Space 1999 at Breakaway, and I was just so excited. I thought I was in a heightened state of anticipation for a good year before that. Before the first episode was broadcast, I think.
Amazing. So you would have been about 10, 9, 10?
About 10, yes, 10. Yeah, 10.
Okay, so quite young to be watching Space 1999. So
it's pretty full on. It's pretty scary stuff,
Yeah. I mean, I daren't mention Dragon's Domain in case that makes you spontaneously wee yourself from childhood scarring.
Such a fantastic piece of science fiction television. I mean, everything about it is perfect. The performances are great. The design of the whole episode and the realization of the monster, which on the one hand, you know that it's a big rubbery thing with dangly tentacles and things, but it is so horrific. And the sound design, again, another thing that is so important to the to that whole process is the sound design, and the sound that monster made as it took over your brain and sucked you in, and it ate Mr. Bronson from Grange Hill. So Michael Sheard, who was a fantastic British character actor who appeared in episodes of Doctor Who and Space 1999, and ultimately was the Mr. Bronson, the authoritarian deputy headmaster from Grange Hill.
So good to see him get it, really.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to come back to Space 1999, but I'm interested because of your watching the puppet shows in the UK and then moving to the US for a bit.
Yes.
So, first of all, as a kid, what did you think about the puppets in general? Did they bother you? Did it feel childish and kiddie? What was your awareness as a kid of them being puppets, and did that matter?
I think because I was so excited by the dynamism and the sense of you were stepping into a completely different world, because they weren't puppet shows. What they were sort of like miniaturized visions of some fantastic world that you could be in for 25 minutes or an hour or whatever. And that, I think, is one thing that unifies all of the Gerry Anderson shows, is the completeness of the vision. Even if you go back to the ones that I hadn't seen, I remember I finally came across a couple of episodes of Four Feather Falls. But even there, you can see the ambition to try and make it look as good as possible. And the same is true with Stingray, which was not widely shown where I lived. So that was quite an exotic thing when Stingray showed up on TV. But again, the whole World Aquanaut Security Patrol with the giant buildings and everything's been thought about. So that's what's cool, is that, yes, they're puppets, but it's not childish, because the giant building that the WASP headquarters are in, it has computers and consoles, and there's a spinning radar on the roof, and everything's been thought about. It's been given, it's got real integrity, and that's what makes those things work so well, I think. And then when you look at something like Thunderbirds and the stylization of the puppets with the large heads and the very distinctive features, but that becomes part of the whole vision for the program. Everything is slightly exaggerated, bigger than life, more extraordinary, and that cuts through to you when you're 4 or 5 years old and you're watching this, and you're just sort of, wow, that's amazing. I want to go there and be these people. So it's it works. It worked very well, and also they're extremely well done. They're not the puppets are as good as they get. It's difficult to make them look much better than that, I think. And by the time you get to something like Captain Scarlet and the detail that's been given and the character in the faces and things, it works extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, they went above and beyond. Bear in mind, they knew what it was going to look like, the finished picture was going to look like on TV at the time, and they were never making it to be viewed as HD. You look at the HD versions of all the shows now, it just shows the incredible level of detail and work that went in. I mean, amazing people who worked on those and must have really loved every element to have gone that far above and beyond.
Absolutely.
And when you went to the US and Thunderbirds and Scarlet were being shown there, I don't know with your circumstances there if you had much contact with other kids, or you were sort of semi in isolation, but was there a different perception of those shows there? Was there some kind of naffness about puppets and puppetry? Because what I see now quite regularly is you get the guys who watched Supercar and Fable XL5 in the early 60s. And then basically after that, there is no syndicated, no US-wide puppetry that entered into their consciousness until Team America. So there's a vacuum there. And so puppetry is viewed very differently in the US. Was that apparent then, do you think?
To be honest, I mean, I was only 4 or 5 years old, so it's difficult to remember. I remember that the shows were popular with my friends at the school I was at, the little elementary school. The American TV was dominated very much by things like the kids' TV, by things like the Flintstones and Scooby Doo, and also the Adam West Batman show was in heavy syndication at the time, and I was an enormous fan, and still am an enormous fan of that old show, and I think that's why I ended up doing the Dark Knight movies in the last 20 years. I think it didn't penetrate as far because it wasn't being shown on the networks. It was just being shown on local affiliates and things like that. So it was just very a regional thing. So if you drove over to Milwaukee, they weren't watching Thunderbirds because it wasn't on the TV over there. So it didn't quite have that level of penetration. And I don't remember UFO being shown on the television when we lived in the States at the time. At least not on the. Yeah. At least it wasn't shown at a time that I could watch it. I'll put it that way.
Well, no, I think the US in particular had a lot of trouble with UFO and its themes. Divorce, adultery, drug taking. Right. I mean, the drug taking in particular was probably quite troubling. Thank you, Paul. More Paul in pod 99. That feels so weird saying that. I mean, I don't have to say it like that every time. No. But 99 does sound like a massive number. Crazy. Yeah, so more Paul next week. Really fascinating. And again, just such a different perspective. All this mixture of stuff from people who worked in the original shows, celebrity fans, people who work in the industry now. I mean, it's brilliant. It is. So thank you, Paul. Do go and follow him on Twitter. That's right. Don't make a fool of him. Just search Paul Franklin. Don't make a fool of him, please. No.
That's great. No, I look forward to next week.
What else have you got for us, Richard?
Talking of the film world, as we have been, Adam Reed on our Facebook group noticed, I don't know if you watched the Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye watch-along that was put together by Esquire magazine last week. I know many thousands of people did. It was very strange, actually. A single camera of Pierce Brosnan in his home in Hawaii, of course, watching GoldenEye and answering questions and commenting on it and giving us his memories and so on.
Lovely.
Anyway, at the very end, Adam noticed something that seemed quite appropriate to play on the podcast. So, here it is.
Okay. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, Esquire. Thank you to all the people who have supported my work, my films. To the memory of Derek Meddings, the most remarkable man. Made all those incredible models from many Bond movies. Thunderbirds. Wow. There you go. But to all you who have supported me as an actor, as a man, as an artist, thank you so much.
Pierce Brosnan, clearly a fan.
Who could have been Captain Scarlet, new Captain Scarlet in the 2005 suit. He was lined up to chat about it, but for some reason it didn't happen. I don't know why.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And of course, lots of comments on the Facebook page saying he should be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've got enough clout to get Pierce Brosnan.
I mean, he's clearly at home with very little to do. I should imagine he'd jump at the chance. But,
fine.
Yeah.
I will try. Yeah. I will immediately... Hang on. I'm just going to get up an email.
Yeah. Because,
and I'm going to write in the subject line.
He clearly knows and admires Derek Meddings' work. If he could talk at least about his relationship with Derek Meddings and the work he did on the Bond movies, that would be interesting.
Okay, so I've put in the subject line, Pierce Brosnan for Gerry Anderson podcast. Yeah. I will find his agent. Yeah. I will send an email. Yeah. And I give you a 99.9% cast iron guarantee, Posterons, that we will not get Pierce Brosnan for the podcast. But I will send the email at the very least. Good. All right?
Great. Now, I've got a really long email here, Jamie. Are you ready for this?
Do you mind if I go for a pee while you're reading it?
You really must.
No, it's all right. I'll say this.
No, hold it for now, Because actually there are some questions in here that you'll need to answer. This is from the marvellously monikered Chris Zaremba.
Oh, yes, Chris.
Now, Chris says, Chris says, hi, Jamie and Richard. Brackets, hi, Chris. Unless this is being read by Richard, in which case it's hi, Richard and Jamie. Yeah.
Oh, smart. That's a really smart approach. That's the first time we've seen that, I think.
That's right. Firstly, says Chris, thanks so much for keeping the memory of Gerry's great work alive. I'm now 63, ancient enough to remember watching Twizzle and Torchy, just. I wasn't really discerning enough at that age to be a fan, obviously, if you watch Torchy, but all that changed when Supercar came along. And from then through to Terrorhawks, I was hooked. Sorry, and please forgive me, I didn't really enjoy New Captain Scarlet. It was either puppets or live action for me, not CGI.
Fair enough, each their own.
Yeah. I haven't heard all of your podcasts by any means.
Anyway, it was nice hearing from Chris, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? Yeah. No, he says, but those that I have heard always give great pleasure and usually answer an unasked question or two. I have loads of questions left. Here are 3 that occurred to me 50 plus years ago and still flummox me even today. I'm sure you've answered them before on the podcast, but I missed them. Number 1. On Fireball, how did XL5 get back on its railcar launch device? And was there a separate launch track for each Fireball? Sorry, that's 2 for the price of 1, he says. Yeah, go on.
If you pop onto the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel and watch the Century 21 Tech Talk episode about Fireball XL5, your question will at least be partly answered, and you can probably extrapolate the rest of the answer to your question from that video.
Excellent.
There's that one.
Number 2, how did the replacement sofa fit in the same hole as the descending one in the lounge floor for the Thunderbird 3 launch sequence?
I imagine there was some sort of slight twisting, rotating mechanism at the base of the sofa swapper, which put it into place.
Okay.
Maybe?
Yeah. And number 3, retrieval of Pod 4. I don't recall that ever being shown, but didn't the water cause a problem in Thunderbird 2's jets?
Once again, if you pop along to the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel and watch the Thunderbird 4 Century 21 Tech Talk, there is a schematic representation of how the Pod 4 pickup was done on water.
Great. And a more recent memory, says Chris, is when you, Jamie, came into my radio show on Marlow FM for a special just before Jerry's funeral. 7 years ago now, of course, but that show still holds the title of the biggest lunchtime audience that the station has ever had.
Really?
Yeah, imagine that.
Wow. Well, I'm honoured to be part of that number.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So anyway, he says, I'd love to host you again on the Marlow FM show if ever you have plans to come around that way. And also, Richard, I would love to have you as a guest if you still live down the road or in Cookham, or has your recent move taken you away? No, not far, Chris, so that would be delightful. So yes, when we're all settled back a bit and got something approaching normal, that might be a nice trip out. And let's see if I can beat Jamie's record.
Oh, yeah, all right, there's the gauntlet thrown down.
Oh, God, of course I won't.
You never know.
No, that's true enough.
Right, well.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Shall we pop over to Chris's randomiser lab?
I mean, he's been ever so patient in there, hasn't he?
He has.
He just
We've
sits
gone
there.
on and on today as
drumming
well.
his fingers, humming a little tune to himself, waiting for his moment.
Yeah, okay, fine. Well, let's pay a visit to Chris in the randomiser castle, then.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in the dark and nasty regions, where nobody goes, stands an ancient castle. Deep within this dank and uninviting place lives a Burke.
Hello.
Overworked servant of the things upstairs.
Chris, where's the randomizer?
But that's nothing compared to the horrors that lurk within the randomizer, for there is always something nasty in there, waiting to come out.
Come back here, you ingredient. I'll give you the bonking of your life. Now, where'd that little squick get to?
I do believe he's hiding under the randomizer, Burke.
Oh, so he is. Right, stand by for a bonking. 1, 2, 5, bonk! Oh, that's torn it.
He's getting away, Burke.
I've got more important things to worry about now, Boney. I'm wondering how many people actually remember the show we're doing a parody of here.
Oh, Burke, this is the worst randomizer intro ever.
Oh, don't say that, Boney. There's still 400 more to go. Right, let's have a look. Oh,
what is it, Burke?
Well, it's not good news, Boney. It's, oh, I seem to have dropped the printout. Silly me. And Drut's eating it. Ha! Good old Drut. Well, I guess we don't have to watch that one then.
Now, Burke, old chap, you know the rules. Whatever the randomizer chooses, that's what you have to watch.
It's alright for you, No Eyes. You're not the one who has to watch. Come in, oh malodorous ones. Oh, globbits. I guess I'll have to go with it. Well, as surely as I've got to fill them upstairs as pustules with scunge, it's yet another bloomin' episode of Torchy the Battery Boy. Or speaking of things that need a good bonking.
Torchy the Battery Boy, I'm a walking, talking toy. Press my switch.
Well, we're living through a time of pestilence and plague, and here comes Torchy to cheer us all up even more. That, he was one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, wasn't he? It was plague, pestilence, famine, and Torchy. I'm sure I've got that right. Anyway, this episode, this thrilling installment in the Torchy saga, is Torchy and the Broken Rocket, which is episode 5. We have done episodes 3, 4, and 6, so we're filling in a vital gap in our Torchy knowledge here with this
and
one.
all the lost toys. But they don't want to come back to Earth and belong to naughty children anymore. So I'll have to go back on my own. But first of all, I must mend my rocket, because Squish, the space boy, broke it for me. I'll knock at his house and he can come and
Remember how it all began on the randomizer?
Squish? What is it?
With Squish breaking Torchy's space rocket. Aww.
Then my rocket. I'll be out as quick as I can.
And watching a serialised show like this in random instalments, it does seem like we're getting nowhere fast or accomplishing nothing. Oh my goodness, there are pyramids in the background.
Battery will run down and I won't be able to use my magic.
I've never seen pyramids in Topsy-Turvy Land before. Oh,
My
well.
rocket quickly. In my little rocket shiny new.
Ah, oh, okay.
Very high up into the deep blue sky. I will wave the earth goodbye.
Well, we're being introduced now to Topsy-Turvy Land's presumably public transportation system. Torchy has sat down on a lift. No, he hasn't sat down on a lift. He sat down on a leaf, which is now flying him, Lord only knows where.
Night, I will pass the moon and the clouds.
Also, it's way too early for a song.
I will start to count the stars as
I will bend the universe to my will.
My little rocket shiny new. I will fly very high up into
I don't know if they've run out of set, but it looks like he's landing in exactly the same place he took off from.
come to.
The pyramids are still in the background. So, oh dear, he was just looking straight at the camera and not moving.
Pillywig the clown.
Did you actually go anywhere? I'm confused.
Hello, Pillywig. Why have you got a scrubbing brush in your hand?
It's covered in chloroform.
But you don't need a brush as big as that.
Oh, yes, I do. I've only got one tooth, and I must take great care of it.
Oh, you are funny.
Dangerously so, in fact.
That's why I'm called Pillywig the Clown. Well, I must be off now, Torchy. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Pillywig. Now I better pick my lollipop.
It's encounters like that make life in Topsy-Turvy Land so rewarding. Anyway, what are we doing now?
Lovely lollipops these are.
We're investigating the lollipop bushes.
Raspberry, strawberry, or... Oh, there you are, Squish. Let's have a game, and I'll squirt my water pistol on you. I haven't time to play. I must find some cardboard to mend my rocket.
Oh, cardboard, yes.
I found a cave the other day.
High stakes in this
I'm
episode.
sure we'll find some cardboard there. Was there a big roll of it? I don't know. I didn't actually go inside the cave because it looked very dark. Well, we'll go in together and I'll switch on my beam and make it light. That's a good idea.
You know, as much as I've knocked this series over the years, I kind of appreciate the sort of magical fairy tale whimsy side of it. It is, you know, for very young children of the 50s, it probably had its appeal. But
of course I'm not afraid.
Here's a cave full of cardboard. Doesn't quite seem to sort of have the same magical whimsy as like lollipop bushes and houses made of fruit.
So are you. No, I'm not. Well, go in on your own then. All right, I will. Oh dear, my knees are knocking together. I don't think I want to go in after all. Now you're the one who's frightened.
The strings won't be able to clear the cave entrance either.
I'll switch on my magic beam.
Oh, good, yeah, magic beam. Oh, no poem this time. No magic beam that is so bright, will you shine your lovely light? Cardboard is in a cave and must be found. Magic beam, la-di-da.
It's quite empty. I can't find any cardboard at all.
Yeah. I mean, normally caves are just brimming with
Sure, we'll
cardboard.
find some here. Never mind. Let's go outside. Go outside?
Oh.
I said, let's go outside. Go outside. Oh, do stop repeating everything I say, Squish. I'm not repeating it.
God, Squish is such an ugly puppet. He really does look like someone's taken a great big orange and just sort of jammed it onto his head.
Did you hear that voice? Did you hear that voice? Good gracious me, it must be.
Shadowy bird-like figure in the corner of the cave.
It's me. Oh, Torchy, whatever can it be?
Or whatever it is, I'm sure Torchy's seen worse. In the depths of hell where he came from. Oh, it's the tingling bird.
Of course, I'm not a bird. I'm a pretty bird.
And this must have been a difficult puppet to operate, to keep the wings... you know, the bird is hovering in front of him, its wings are flapping to keep it in the air. It must have been hard to just manipulate those two wires operating the wings without sort of jerking the whole puppet around, but they're doing quite well with this.
Oh, that's kind of you. Not at all. I always have toys boy's in trouble. That's why I go. Like an ambulance or a fire engine bell.
Wait, were there toys on Topsy-Turvy Land before Torchy and the others got here? Otherwise, poor old Tingling would have been very lonely.
Squeeze me, I'll pick you. Oh, don't be cross with me, Bird. I want you to help us.
That's another thing that makes this very typically 1950s. It's like, and you know, people are all nice and jolly on the surface, but you know if you cross them in an instant, they will not only punish you, they will hurt you.
I've heard of a pepper tree. That's because you haven't lived on Topsy-Turvy Land for long. We've got wonderful...
Yes, noob.
Yeah. I'll fly on ahead of you and show you where it is.
Oh, now we're in the...
Torchy and Squish went outside the cave.
Oh, okay. I thought, why is there a sky in the cave?
Sky. Torchy and Squish followed him through the wood, and then they heard somebody sneeze. Bless you. Thank you very much, Torchy, but I didn't sneeze.
If I say you're blessed, I'm going to bless you. Shut up.
Bless you, bless you, bless you. I do hope you haven't caught a cold. I told you I didn't sneeze. And if you don't believe me, I'll squirt some water over you with my water pistol. It wasn't Squish sneezing.
It is answer to everything. Who could have sneezed? This is our latest mystery dilemma.
Oh, the little peppercorns sneeze. Oh, how funny. Here's the pepper tree now.
Oh, a pepper tree. Oh, the tree itself is sneezing.
Sure, you'll find some cardboard underneath it.
Yeah, you always find cardboard under pepper tree. This is just basic knowledge. Everybody knows this.
Much more quickly.
Is that it? Are we done? Oh, no, we're not done.
All the toys were digging under the pepper tree.
Well, 4 of them.
Squish became tired. And
We've got Flopsy and Pom Pom helping.
I don't want to dig for silly old cardboard. I'd much rather do some mischief. Hello? What's this on the ground?
It's your water pistol.
It's a peppercorn that's blown off the pepper tree.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh,
Oh, I really shouldn't be watching this at the moment because I am struggling with hay fever a bit and even thinking about sneezing is kind of making me feel a bit sort of...
for my pistol, and I'll put pepper powder into it.
On the other hand, it means I don't have to look at Squish if I've got my head in my hand sneezing.
I must be very
Cut away!
Blow it into the toys' faces.
Cut away! I don't need to see Squish.
So I'll just squirt it onto the ground.
Okay, fine. Cut. Right, thank you.
While the toys were busy digging, Squish picked up all the fallen peppercorns, and very carefully, so that no one could see, he opened each peppercorn and put the pepper powder into his water pistol.
Oh, this is a fairly fiendish plan we're hatching
Where
here.
the toys were digging for cardboard, and squirted the pepper onto the ground.
Right, so I know they're digging for cardboard. I'm not quite sure why they think cardboard is underground, but just the sight of Torchy standing in a hole with a great big shovel, it does look like he's looking for somewhere to bury the bodies. And the fact he's got Flopsy and Pom Pom in the hole helping him kind of makes me think he might be about to smash them over the head with a shovel and finish the job with no more interruptions. But, you know, I'm sure he would.
It is to be naughty. It's not lovely at all, and I'm going to break the peppercorn over you.
Oh.
Stupid tinkling bird. Achoo!
Oh, I couldn't move out of the way or anything. That would be silly.
Achoo! That serves you right. It's very dangerous to play with pepper. You must never...
That's it. Moral coming in. Children of the 1950s, moral coming in. Very dangerous to play with pepper.
Tingling bird flew back to the toys.
Oh, dear.
Haven't found the cardboard yet? No, we've dug and dug, but we haven't found anything. I'm going
I
to
found so many dead bodies, though. You can't imagine how happy I am.
Torchy, I'm much too piggle-poggle.
Pom Pom seems to have disappeared entirely.
Come on, Pom Pom, let's have a rest.
Pom Pom!
Thank you. I'll go on digging a bit more.
Okay.
How hard this ground is. I'm getting all the nasty black earth under my nails.
I do like Pom Pom. I think she's the only character that I genuinely think is a sort of...
What can I sell?
Well, she's just generally a character I like. I like a fussy dog.
Like chocolate. But how silly of me.
Oh.
Couldn't find any chocolate underneath the ground.
No. We've had this before. You found a chocolate puddle once, didn't you?
Torchy! Come and see what I found. I can hear Pom-Pom calling. I'm sure she's found the cardboard.
She's only a foot away from me, and she was here a moment ago. I don't know why I'm so surprised.
Have you found the cardboard, Pom-Pom? No, but I found a puddle. It's a chocolate puddle. A chocolate puddle? Yes, lovely milky chocolate.
No, again, it's not chocolate. The sewage treatment plant is backed up again.
Sick. I don't mind being sick. I'm the happiest dog in the world. I've got lots of curlers to put in my hair and lots of chocolate to put in my tummy.
And chocolate is poisonous to dogs, so,
Silly ragdoll. Give me back my curls.
Although, one year, actually, my dog, ate my advent calendar, all the chocolate from my advent calendar, and she was absolutely fine, but, Oh, okay, now we're back on safe ground. Pom-Pom is savaging, Flopsy.
There they go again.
Oh dear, disemboweling each other again. What larks.
Up here as naughty as children. I'm not going to be naughty anymore.
Oh, yeah, we'll see how long that lasts.
All right, and we'll look for some cardboard tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, save the really fun stuff for tomorrow.
Play fire engines.
Maybe we can do that in the morning, and then in the afternoon we can watch some paint dry. Ah. Is that it?
Torchy.
That's it, that's the end. Okay, that was, whatever episode that was, I've forgotten the title. Torchy and the Broken Rocket. Well, thrills are plenty in that one, obviously.
I'm a magic beam.
And the occasional hint of the sort of strange morals of the 1950s. You know, feeding chocolate to dogs, absolutely fine. Pepper, that's the real danger facing young people of the 1950s. Having pepper blown in their faces.
Press my switch, my bulb start.
Kind of a meandering plot to that one, really, because they set out to find cardboard, and alas, they did not find cardboard. Fortunately, we have seen the next episode in the story, King Dithers. We know that he has some cardboard. Thank goodness. So it looks like everything is fine and well in good old topsy-turvy land. Did that make you feel better? I hope that made you feel better. Just a little 10-minute escape from reality. Good old Torchy.
Wow, that's another one done then. Still, running a bit shorter than usual. I know what I'll do. I'll make next week's selection now, and that way it's all done and dusted. I say, Beck, old chap, you really think that's wise? Ah, stop worrying, Pony. What could possibly go wrong? After all, there's nothing worse than Torchy, is there? Well, except for that one episode that's even worse, but what are the chances of... Oh, Globbits.
There's the end of Torchy. I wish it was the end of Torchy.
Jamie!
Sorry, Torchy.
How could you?
know.
Are there any Torchy fans out there? Silence.
No, I don't think so. I can't imagine that any listener has leapt up and gone, yes, me! But if you are the president of the Torchy the Battery Boy fan club, then do please write in, and we'd love to read out your name next week so people can avoid you. No, I mean, it's got its own charm, but it's so weird.
Yeah.
And I find the more I experience Torchy, the more I find his voice really annoying.
Oh.
It's pretty much how podcast listeners feel about me, Richard. But it's that kind of woman doing a little voice and overly kind of earnest. And it's got a tone that goes right through me.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough. Gosh, I can see it's really affected you.
I feel like a real misery today, but...
yeah. Well, do you need cheering up a bit, Jamie?
I would love to be cheered up, Richard. What can you cheer me up with?
Here's a lovely audio file that was sent to us this week from Big Al.
Okay.
Hello, Gerry Anderson podcast. It's Big Al here. I just wanted to say a big thank you to you guys, Richard and Jamie, or should it be Jamie and Richard, or do we want to start that? And of course, Chris Dale, the Randomiser General, salutes. Just a big thank you for keeping on doing what you're doing, getting that podcast out every Monday. I'm one of those essential worker peoples who's still doing the old 9 to 5, and it's just really great to still have you guys in my ear things every Monday without fail, keeping me sane, or just about. Keep it up, guys. Stay safe. Good stuff. Ta-da.
Yeah, that's really nice. That really cheered me up, I must say, when I heard that the other day. So thank you so much, Big Al.
Thank you, Big Al.
Yeah, and also that comes back to our thoughts for our 100th podcast. If you would like to send us in an audio file, it's very easy. Just record it on your phone and send it to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Let us know what the past 100 pods have meant to you. Tell us about your greatest podcast experiences, your favourite interviews, your favourite games. Have you ever written in before? And what are your hopes for the next 100?
Yeah, I would love for us to get a few people who've never sent anything in before, aren't members of the group, people we've not heard from before.
Yeah.
You know, if you haven't been in contact before, this is the time. Yeah. Now is the time. Before 6 p.m. on the 6th of May 2020, send us your audio files and, say something nice.
Yeah, that'd be great. Finally, I'm not going to do a recap of Plot of Peril this week. I've been playing it for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Go back and listen to last week's if you need a reminder, or I will play it next week. And then finally reveal the winner for our 100th podcast as well. And I might even have a little prize for them, Jamie.
Oh, no, really?
I might actually have a little prize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it leftover decorations from Coronimus?
It could be, yeah, a bit of turkey, Yeah.
Are you actually having turkey?
Something like that. Probably chicken, I should imagine, yeah. But we're putting the tinsel up and all that, we're digging out the Christmas tree. Oh, yeah. Wearing my Thunderbird's Christmas jumper.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Well, I look forward to the selfies of that.
Exactly, yeah. And finally, I should just reveal this week's word of the week. Jamie, have you noticed?
I have not noticed. Now, last time we agreed on it, didn't we?
Yeah, we did before we recorded.
This time we forgot. And I forgot, you remembered, and I don't know what it is.
It's actually something. It's a 2-word phrase that I've used twice throughout this podcast.
No way.
Yeah.
What was it?
This week's phrase of the week was marvellously monikered.
Oh, of course. You use that for Milton Finesilver and also for Chris Zaremba.
Chris Zaremba. There you go.
So now you've said it, I remembered it. Gosh.
I like this. This is fun, isn't it?
Well, yes. So shall I try and do one next week?
Yeah, try and slip it in.
I've got to try and remember to do that, though, so awkward. Okay, right, thank you very much for that. If you spotted this week's phrase of the week, then
well done, you.
Give yourself a pat on the back, but no need to write it.
And if you didn't, give yourself a pat on the side. You tried.
Another Richard Jamesism right there.
You.
Okay, is that the end of this Gerry Anderson podcast, number 98?
I think it is, Jamie. Come on, you can't expect much more.
No, I'm absolutely knackered now. That is true.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yes, imagine that point where we've got literally nothing to say to each other.
It
must be fast approaching.
Yeah, it's going to happen, yeah.
Okay, well, until then, we'll keep on doing this Gerry Anderson podcast thing and bring you podcast 99 next week.
Might as well.
Please write in, send your audio files ahead of Pod 100. Please leave us a rating. That's when you go on and leave us a rating in stars and a review, and then those combined become a rating. Please do that on your podcast platform of choice, and also another podcast platform of not your choice.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah, you can. You just go, so again, I think we said last week, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, go and leave a review on Stitcher.
Right.
If you listen on Spotify,
you don't
go
have to
and leave
prove
a review.
That you've listened to it on those.
On Castbox, is that a thing? I don't know. Yeah, you don't have to prove it, but obviously by doing it, you have listened because you've heard this. And send us in a screenshot of any reviews you do, and we'll maybe read out our favourites next week. It really does help us. So hopefully you've got a little bit of time on your hands right now to do that. So spend the 90 seconds to do it. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And until then being podcast 99 or another podcast in the future, we're going to go away now. I'm certainly going to go away. You're going to go away, Richard? I think we should go away.
Yeah.
Okay, going away. Goodbye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
There we are, just deleting the script. Yeah. Yes.
Script in inverted commas.
Yeah. How long did you take on that one?
About 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Yeah.
For an hour and a half of gold.
I have to make a copy.
Make a copy,
Make a copy. Make a copy of the last week's script. Change the numbers.
If you're lucky, yes. Sometimes you get around to doing that.
Sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
Put the interviewee in.
Yes.
And then
the
send it over
as
to you.
well.
Yeah, a little intro and any news. The news, that's the bit that takes the time. You see,
Yeah,
I have to research it and look ahead to what's coming.
Wow. I never knew there was so much in it.
There's a huge amount of effort.
Yeah.
And obviously you print out all the emails and stuff.
Well, collate is the word. Oh, damn it. I could have used that next week, couldn't I? Wasted it.
Yeah. I might look for a synonym of collate and try and use that next week myself.
Good.
No, I've given that away now, haven't I?
Yeah. Curses.
Must try harder. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to get my thinking cap on about this word of the week.
All right, good. Suits you.
Yeah, thank you.
The thinking cap.
Yeah, it's
got a D on it.
handsome one,
Did
isn't
you used
it?
to wear that at school, that pointy one?
Right, I think it's time we go now before this gets more personal. Bye. Richard.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.